How's it going, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Perfect Reload Weekly, where every week I trip over my words as soon as we start recording. This is the show where we take a look back at the week in video game news. And we've got a lot to go over this week. So I actually played a handful of different games. We had a lot of news. Sony had their big state of play thing. So yeah, I'm excited to get into stuff. So joining me as always, Mr. Demon Possessed Television, Christian Slater.
Welcome to the show that leaves you feeling like you have a layer of grime that no shower can ever remove.
Yeah, he is honestly not wrong. So what I have been playing this week, I tried out Atomic Heart. Atomic Heart came out, it's got some controversy. Every game that comes out these days is controversy surrounding it. You can't, it's inescapable at this point. But it's a very Bioshock-esque first-person shooter set in the 1950s, but it's very futuristic. There's robots everywhere, flying cities, cars that fly, whole bunch of stuff. It's the one thing that really kind of got me when I started it up was it's very, very nice looking game. I actually decided to try it out on PC instead of downloading it on Xbox. It's available on Game Pass. And immediately adjusted to my ultra wide monitor. Not every game does, though. Pretty much every modern game these days does. It has no ray tracing, which is really surprising. Not because, I expect every game these days to have ray tracing, but it was marketed as part of NVIDIA's games with ray tracing initiative. And so for it to come out after a few years of marketing that this is going to be a big ray tracing game, and also they had a demo out that had the game with ray tracing in it, so to not have it was very odd. I was really surprised by that. It took me a few minutes of digging through the menus to finally realize it's just straight up not in here. So that was kind of strange, but I played it with max settings. For whatever reason, I could not get the frame counter to come on. I don't know if it's a particular thing with the game or what, but if you have an NVIDIA graphics card, you can just throw up your FPS in the corner of the screen. And for whatever reason in this game, it just would not show up. But in actually playing it, I was at least 60 frames a second. It didn't feel like I was playing anything less than that. I think the game, design-wise, that's probably its strongest feature is it's got some really cool architecture. It's very bright. I'm sure as the game goes on, it won't necessarily always be this way, but I mean, it looked like, the opening of the game, you're walking through not a parade. I mean, there was a parade going on, but it's like a celebration. So it's very bright, vibrant, colorful, although they use a very limited color palette. That's on purpose. It's definitely to kind of give it that stark sort of Soviet retro futuristic look. So that I understand. There's a lot of grays, but the hints of colors that they do have, it really does kind of stand out. Another odd thing with the game is that I at least couldn't find it. There is no option for Russian voice to have English subtitles with Russian voices. This is a Russian, I think they're technically in Cyprus, but this is a very Russian influenced developed game. I believe there's Russian staff that worked on it. And everybody has an American accent. There was a couple of British accents I picked out, but for the most part, the main character has an American accent, and the writing is very American, and the writing is very current sounding. It doesn't necessarily sound like the way people spoke in the 50s, even though it is alternate history. So there's a bit of a disconnect there. I really think they should have, at the very least, if you're going to have the game in English, they probably should have gotten people to put on Russian accents, maybe. It's very strange. And also, the word comrade is pronounced differently. Different people pronounce it differently in the game, and that was kind of strange. I always thought the word was comrade. Maybe it's comrade. I don't know. But the gameplay's fine. I didn't run into any issues. I didn't run into any glitches. My biggest complaint with the game is that there is no manual save. You have to go to a special room and save your game. And I think that's antiquated. I don't think it adds anything to the game. The whole argument is like, oh, it adds tension. Like when you had to do the whole typewriter thing back in Resident Evil, oh, it's adding tension to the game. No. It's outdated and it's dumb. I just don't like it. It's not a game I'm going to keep playing. I played like an hour and a half. I'm done. Like I got my fill. I just really wanted to just kind of check it out, mostly for the purposes so I had something different to talk about, for this show. But also, I am trying to. I'm making it a point to try different games. And if a game is coming out on Game Pass and it's something that I don't immediately know I'm not going to like, I want to try it out and expand my gaming horizons. And, I think that if you're into that Bioshock style of game, first-person shooter with a lot of interesting concepts and, it's got a very cool look about it, I would check it out. I would recommend Atomic Heart. It's just not for me. The next thing that popped up was a game that I don't remember how I found this game. I think it might have just been an article when I was sourcing the news for the week. There was like maybe a little opinion piece on this, and it's called My Dream Setup. And it's not so much a game as it is kind of like an interactive toy. It's very reminiscent of if you're playing The Sims and you're just in build mode, but you're locked to one room. And what it is, you're given a blank space, four walls and a floor, and you're building like a room. But it's designed to be, it's essentially like Reddit battle stations. If you've ever been on Reddit and you've gone to battle stations, it's where people post like, here's my insane office with my crazy PC and my 20 monitors, and I got plants hanging from the ceiling, and oh, here's a cat bed underneath my desk, and blah, blah, blah. People show off their rooms, show off their setups. And that's really what it is. So you're building, you can put a bed in there. You can put couches, televisions, desk, PCs. They even get down to the like tiny little details where you can put like a Elgato Stream Deck on your desk. You can put a mouse pad down, a mice. Like it gets fairly detailed. There's a very like cartoonish, lighthearted style to it. I played the game on mute, so there probably is music, but I was listening to a podcast while I played it. I want to play more of it. It was very confusing to get into. There's no guide in the game, and the controls are not apparent. Like you would assume that if you hover over like an icon, it would have like maybe text that comes up and says like, hey, this is what this button does. That isn't apparent. There's no tutorial, nothing. I ended up having to go onto YouTube and watch somebody's video and figure out like, oh, okay, this is how you add objects to the room. The other thing that's really weird is there's a blueprint mode where you see the blueprint and you can draw lines to form the shape of the room, and you could put, here's a door, here's a window, et cetera, et cetera. And you can make that room shape any shape you want, but in order to interact with that room, it has to be a square or rectangle. So like the way I did it is to have like, it looks like a square, but then at the end it kind of has a cutout, like almost like an indent. And I was like, oh, that's cool. Like you could put like some shelving back there and that would look really neat. Now you can't do it, even though it's technically like a rectangular shape, because it has that little like indent. You can't do it. So at that point it's like, well, then what's the point of this blueprint thing? Why don't you just make 3 different size rooms, small, medium, and large, and that's it? Like, I don't know. That didn't really make any sense to me. Maybe it's something they'll add down the road. I don't know, but I'm going to come back to it. I'm going to play it more this week. I like messing around with little things like this. It's very reminiscent, even though it doesn't have like objectives or anything. It's reminiscent to like those like game dev story, like mobile games. It's got kind of that look to it. And I don't know, I just like little architecture tools. Like I played a lot of Sims in my life, and I don't actually play The Sims. I just kind of go into build mode and build houses. It's just something I've always really enjoyed doing, and this kind of is just another way to do it. It was like $5. It's on sale. I think it's like $6.99 or $7.99, but it was on sale. So I think it came out this week, and it was $5 and change, I think. So, not expensive, and I would check it out. The last thing I played this week is I am continuing my journey in Hogwarts Legacy. Out of curiosity, I did look up a guide for the game to kind of see where I'm at, because it was starting to kind of feel like, oh, I'm wrapping things up, and I looked it up, and I'm 3 missions away from the end. So unless I get super busy later today, I will probably finish the game, and next week maybe I'll get into some spoiler discussion on my thoughts on the story and all that stuff. But I mean, it's, as of right now, 26 days into February, it is my game of the year. That's going to change if the games that I hope come out this year, that are announced to come out this year, come out. It's going to have some very stiff competition, but it really is a very, very, very good game. And speaking of games coming out, since this is going to be the last episode of February, we're about to start March, I figured we'd look ahead at the March releases. So I grabbed what I kind of thought were the major releases of March, and we're kicking things off on March 7th with that Wo Long Fallen Dynasty game. This is from Team Ninja, so I think that's the Neo people. I don't know much about this game. It's not for me, so I didn't do a lot of research. I believe it is similar in playstyle to Neo. I did read some previews, and a lot of people are saying it's very, very difficult, but it's coming out on Game Pass, which I think is great, because if this is like Neo, which in my mind is Souls-ish, and Elden Ring has been so popular, maybe they get that kind of crowd that's like, oh, this is on Game Pass, we can just go try this out, and it's similar to this other game we like, and maybe they get maybe this game blows up. That'd be cool, for them. It's just not for me. And the next up, March 17th, we have a pair of releases. Bayonetta Origins, forgive me if I pronounce this wrong, Cereza and the Lost Demon. This looked neat. This doesn't look like a traditional Bayonetta game. I saw it in the Nintendo Direct from a few weeks ago. It's got a pretty cool, interesting art style. I never kept up with the Bayonetta games. I played the first one, but I never played 2, and I didn't play 3. I don't have a Switch anymore. But it's a cool franchise, and I like Platinum games. To me, Platinum games will always kind of be defined by Vanquish and Metal Gear Rising. Vanquish is probably my favorite thing that they've ever done. I really, really love that game. I thought it was an excellent playing game, and I really enjoyed the way the first Bayonetta played, and I'm sure I'd like 2 and 3. I just, when 2 came out, 2 is a Wii U game, right? I had a Wii U. Maybe I rented 2. It's entirely possible that I rented 2. But I know I certainly haven't played 3 because I don't have a Switch. But so that's coming out. The other game coming out that day is a game that I am getting, so it'll be the first game of March. And the next game I pick up, which is WWE 2K23. They're doing kind of some weird promotion around this game. They're doing a lot of promotion, a lot of hype for this game, but we're not seeing, unless I'm just missing it, a lot of their promotion has just kind of been like the roster reveal and what everybody's rating is and all that stuff. I haven't seen a ton of just straight gameplay, and we're only a couple weeks away from this game coming out, so it's just kind of odd. I want to just see a match from start to finish, and maybe what's the story for the story mode this year? What are we getting into? Stuff like that, but I'm going to pick it up. I don't know which version of the game I'm going to get. Last year they do a digital only version now that's special. You can't get physical. Last year was the NWO edition, and I didn't get that. That's $120. And that kind of sucked, because for the longest time, you couldn't get that DLC separately. Eventually you could, but for the longest time you couldn't. So those characters and that arena and all that stuff was just locked to that $120 version. You couldn't buy, say, the $80 version or the $90 version or whatever it is, and then just pay the extra money later on to get it. That didn't happen for a while. So for this one, they have another $120 version. But it is digital only, and I have started to buy most of my games digital these days. And it, for a wrestling game, you can kind of play that year round, so it kind of makes sense. I am less likely to buy a game that's just going to have another version come out next year digitally. I don't know. We'll see what happens. I'll pick it up, and I'll talk about it in a few weeks. And another pair releasing on March 24th, EA Sports PGA Tour. This is EA's long-awaited return to golf games. The 2K picked up the ball and ran with it because we didn't have a golf game for a really long time. And I thought their second effort was very, very good. I played quite a bit of it. And then last year's version, which I was going to pick up, and then the reviews came out and they're like, this just isn't that great. I was like, all right, I'll wait. And then some gameplay footage of PGA Tour came out, and I played a lot of the EA golf games back in the day. I wish I could remember what year it was, PGA 13 or 14. It was the one with the Masters in it. That one was great. Like, to me, that's like the best playing golf game ever. I really, really like that one. And it looks like for this game, they're kind of bringing some of those features back. So I don't know if I'm going to pick it up right away. That's one of those games where I'd be happy to wait a year and get it on Game Pass when it goes to EA Play. Or in 6 months, it probably will go on deep discount. You can get it for half off. So I don't know, maybe there. And the other game coming out that day, a lot of people I know are very excited about it, Resident Evil 4 Remake. I played Resident Evil 4 on the GameCube. I think the first Resident Evil game I ever played, I'm sure I played a demo of the first one, and then I played Code Veronica on the Dreamcast. And Resident Evil was just never my thing. I just never got into it. I don't like horror games. But I did play Resident Evil 4. I had a buddy of mine. We were in a band together at the time, and it was coming out. And he was like, we should get this game. So we did. We got the game. We played it on my GameCube, and he would come over and we'd play it. And it was... He played it more than I did. We would kind of hand off the controller, but I was happy to kind of watch along. And I thought it was a good game. I think that the aiming, like having to stop and then aim, that's atrocious. At the time, it was like, whatever, that's just the way the game is. Games have come up with better control schemes since then. So, it's kind of been replaced. But, I think that what they are doing with these Resident Evil remakes is obviously now we're on the fourth one of them. Potentially, I don't know if they remake 5. Maybe. To me, it always seemed like 4 was like the big one. Like that was like, to me, that was like the apex of the series. Like the height of Resident Evil's popularity to me was always Resident Evil 4. But it seems like since those remakes have come out, people have really gotten into like, no, Resident Evil 2 is kind of like the big deal. And then obviously people really enjoy the last couple that have come out, the first person ones. Not for me, but I'm glad that Capcom has committed to doing these remakes because, sometimes you just need fan service. And fan service isn't always a bad thing. Sometimes you just really kind of want fan service in a game, and it's the way it is. And then last of the month, rounding up, The Last of Us Part 1 coming to PC. Not too much to say about that. It's, just the PC port of The Last of Us Part 1. And then MLB The Show, the annual baseball game, which, these days it's on Game Pass. So I will pick it up on Game Pass, and I'll enjoy my baseball. And as I'm talking about this, I realize that breaking the fourth wall here, I have forgotten to trigger several of Christian Slater's jokes. And so this episode is going down the tubes real fast because I know obviously you come here for my sharp comedic writing, but so we'll be back in a moment with the news. Back with the news, and we'll go over first the Sony State of Play that happened last week. And I'm not going to go over every single game in there. I'll hand pick a couple. They showed off Baldur's Gate 3. Baldur's Gate's a legendary franchise, PC RPG, very fantasy driven. This is going to be kind of like a counterpoint to Diablo coming out this year. These big franchises with new entries. I'll check out Baldur's Gate 3. I liked Baldur's Gate 2. I played some of that. The offshoot Divinity Original Sin 2 played some of that as well. They had J.K. Simmons for the trailer, and I assume he's probably playing a character in the game as well. So that was neat to see, something different. They've announced the release date. It's coming out the last day of August. And then Street Fighter 6, which was nice to see. They're continuing their line of showing off new characters. We saw Zangief, Lily, who's a brand new character, and Cammy, who has a very different look, going full in on like patriotic British kind of look. But Zangief was like the big one that stood out, and it seems like that was the one that a lot of people are gravitating to talking about because he very much looks and seemingly plays much more like a professional wrestler than he has. So that was pretty cool. I think Street Fighter 6 and Capcom, they are knocking out of the park with the advertising for this game to get people ready. They've talked about making a commitment to making the game more accessible. They have that commentary system, which if it works right, will be tossing out some like tips, to help you play better as you're doing it. they're really going all out with making this cast feel like larger than life, over the top, bright, vibrant, fun to play with, because not everybody's going to go online and not everybody's going to go to local tournaments and train for Evo and live, sleep, and breathe this game. Some people just want to play against the computer. Some people maybe play some games online. They want to play local co-op against their friends. They just want a fun fighting game to play. And I think that Street Fighter V was kind of a misstep. 4 was good. To me, Street Fighter in a lot of ways kind of got eclipsed. I think the last few Mortal Kombats really took away their casual audience. And for the competitive scene, like Guilty Gear's been doing really well, and Tekken 7 was really blew up. And of course, people are still playing in the modern King of Fighters. And I think that Street Fighter 6 is definitely Capcom trying to reclaim their crown, atop the throne of the fighting game community. So I'm excited to see what comes of it. I'm gonna play Street Fighter 6 this year. I'm really looking forward to it. And then the headliner of Sony State of Play was the Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, which left me really scratching my head, because I guess I assumed that this game was going to be like the Arkham games, because Rocksteady's making them. Obviously a twist on the formula. They don't want to just make the same game over and over again. What it is, though, is an always online, even if you're playing it single player, live service kind of looter game, similar to Destiny. And the game is getting kind of torn apart in the media. There are some really damning articles coming out, like, why are you doing this? Like, this is not the game anybody wants. You're shooting yourselves in the foot. And I hope that that's not the case, but they didn't really show anything in this gameplay that made me feel like, oh, I really want to play this game, especially after the last game that did this style, even though it wasn't a live service game, but that sort of Arkham combat thing was Gotham Knights last year. And that was a big misstep. That game got torn apart in the reviews. And there was a comment I saw on Reddit I think it was attached to the trailer of the game, where this person said, why does every character play the same? And I think the comment included the line, Captain Boomerang fires more bullets than boomerangs. And it's like, yeah, you know what? You're right. There didn't seem to be anything really unique about these characters. And I remember there was a big sticking point with Gotham Knights, where it was like, why do all these characters kind of have jetpacks in ways to get around the city via the air? Because that was just the way they made the game, was shoehorning these characters into this, and it was just strange. I guess I hope the game does well. I don't know. I don't want to see more games as a service. I think it's a horrible way to just milk money out of players, but that is kind of where we're at with video games. And I don't know, if that's not your thing, then don't buy the game. And maybe that sends a message like, hey, people are just kind of fed up with games like this. And now we'll go from there. And then next up was a really odd one. Xbox is acting like they already own Activision, even though they definitely don't. And they have signed a legally binding agreement for the next 10 years to bring Call of Duty to Nintendo platforms.
So does this thing just melt your Switch when you turn it on?
Yeah, I'm going to tell you right now, just the install for Warzone will melt your Switch, because they're saying that they're going to bring a parody, a version with full feature and content parity on the same day as Xbox. There's no way in hell that the Switch is going to run Warzone or standard Call of Duty multiplayer, let alone the campaign, which has higher graphical fidelity than Warzone in the multiplayer, and is feature and content parity. That's not going to happen. But I think the funnier thing about this is that just Xbox and Microsoft just are acting like they just already own this company, when it's kind of a 50-50 right now, if they actually will, if everything goes through. There's these continued meetings over the next however long to decide if this is actually going to happen or not. But I just thought it was kind of they're being a little presumptuous, I guess. But sticking with Microsoft news, the next Forza Horizon 5 expansion has been announced. And this one's actually pretty cool. I have been thinking about getting back into Forza Horizon, as I haven't really played it since, kind of the surrounding months when it came out. And the new update is they're going to do like a whole rally thing. So similar to kind of like the dirt games. But the thing that was really interesting in this, and this is a quote from the article on Video Games Chronicle about it, 10 new cars, and it's going to have dramatic craters, an abandoned quarry, and an entirely smashable palm forest. And it said that there's going to be new kind of graphical systems in it. They're saying an entirely new system of deformable terrain. So that's going to be really interesting. I will say that the Horizon team really puts in a lot of effort to their expansions. The last one they did, the first expansion, was the Hot Wheels thing. And it's such a well-made game. Like, it really is kind of the best modern racing game, at least for like arcade racing. And I watched the footage of this thing, and it's like, man, they're already taking this really good game and they're just adding. They're not trying to make the game better. They're not trying to change the game. They're just trying to give you this other portion of the game that adds to it. It's not about making the game or changing the game. It's about adding a positive to a positive. And that's what I really like about the way they do their expansions. They're not trying to fix something that's not broken. So if you're a Forza Horizon 5 fan, March 29th is when it's coming out. I am looking forward to it. That was a great, great game. A little bit of sad news, I guess. Shinji Mikami is leaving Tango Gameworks, and that is interesting because that's the company that he founded. And so it's kind of strange because you would think that if he founded the company, even though they did get purchased and they are now part of Microsoft because they're owned by Bethesda, you would think he would kind of have free reign for all this, but you never know. I guess maybe you wonder kind of what's going on in his head.
Yeah, actually, I've got some breaking news right now.
Breaking news.
We're developing a survival horror game together based on that episode of Entourage I was in.
Awesome. I mean, I always thought that Shinji Mikami should make survival horror games based on singular episodes of past HBO series. But there's all these things coming around saying that Shinji Mikami was retiring. He only wanted to make like 3 more games, and I guess technically after Hi-Fi Rush, that was like the third of the 3 more games he wants to do. I don't know. I don't particularly think he's going to stay away from the video game industry. Maybe he does retire. I don't know. If he wants to, go for it. I mean, the dude accomplished a ton in his career. He is like legendary game developer. So, this is his swan song. Hey, at least he goes out on a high note with Hi-Fi Rush. That game was great. But, we'll see. And then to tie things up in a nice little bow with fighting game stuff, during the middle of a seemingly random phone call with Warner Brothers, who was talking mostly about how they're making more Lord of the Rings movies, it just got casually announced that Mortal Kombat 12 is coming out this year. No marketing, no advertising, no graphic on Twitter, no cryptic tweets from Ed Boon. Just, oh yeah, by the way, we're working on Mortal Kombat 12. It's coming out this year. Hey, you know what? Street Fighter 6 is coming out in the summer. Have Mortal Kombat come out in the winter. Maybe people get burned out on Street Fighter. They want something different. They pick up Mortal Kombat. What I'm really curious about is because I think they had said that kind of the design philosophy of all of this was that Mortal Kombat 9, 10, and 11 were going to be like a trilogy, and the story did kind of wrap that up as a trilogy, and that when they come back again with 12, it will be new again. So they kind of reinvented Mortal Kombat with Mortal Kombat 9, and that 12 would be the next reinvention. So I really want to see what they do, because Mortal Kombat, really doing that story mode in 9, that really changed things for fighting games. Fighting games stopped becoming just this thing that you would buy and you would either play these matches online or play matches with your friends and potentially just kind of get burned out because that was the only content. And really, back to the arcade days, that's all you needed. But we have changed and we are not in the arcade days anymore. So having this like single player story with a narrative that went across multiple games and introduced new characters and was actually like pretty well written for a fighting game story, people got invested in it. I think they did an amazing job. I think they knocked it out of the park. I was super excited about all those Mortal Kombat games. I loved playing them. They became day one purchases, must buys. So I really want to see what they're going to do with Mortal Kombat 12. And I know the eternal struggle with Mortal Kombat has always been, and the same thing with Street Fighter, though. I don't feel like Street Fighter gets the amount of slack or the amount of hate, I guess, for lack of a better term, that Mortal Kombat does. People are always saying, like, they either want like just the classic Mortal Kombat characters or they want all new characters. You know, they like when you mix them together, which is what they've been doing. People always complain, well, why isn't this character in the game? Or I don't like the stupid new character. And so I think that maybe this is a really good opportunity for them to kind of start fresh with a new cast. And I don't necessarily mean to say that like, oh, Scorpion shouldn't be in the game or Sub-Zero shouldn't be in the game or anything like that, but you know, you've built up so much goodwill with players over the past 3 games. There wasn't a bad one in the bunch. People really, really like those games. Cash in all that goodwill and see if you have the trust of those purchasers to say, hey, you know, it says Mortal Kombat on the box, but we're giving you all new characters. But hey, down the road in DLC, as Mortal Kombat always does heavy DLC, especially like licensed movie characters, we're going to do a classic combat pack and you'll get 12 of the most popular classic Mortal Kombat characters down the line. But for the story and for the base game, we're going to do some new characters. I think that'd be a really interesting thing for them to do. You know, but we'll see. That pretty much wraps up the news for this week, and that pretty much wraps up the show. I know I have been very delayed on getting the next episode of Full Motion Sickness up. It's just been, the next one is like a longer game, so it's just more of a time commitment to record, and I've just been swamped with stuff lately, so it is coming soon. But other than that, we'll be right back here next week, and you know, Christian, anything else you want to bring up before we go? I know I kind of forgot to hit your buttons and I feel bad today because I know you had a lot to say. You had some very funny jokes about nudity written about Atomic Heart. So anything else you want to say?
Adios, fuckers.
All right. Well, short, sweet, to the point. See you next week.